Hello and welcome back to Comics Matter Podcast. I'm your host Jesse, and with me today is another great returning guest. Since last time I've had him on, they have become. There's a typo in my notes. Become a weekend editor at GamePer, and host of their own podcast, Procedural Conversation, or not Procedural Conversation. That sounds like you're talking about like crime shows. Producer conversation, is that how you pronounce it, right, Chris?
No, you can procedural conversation.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, geez, now you're making me doubt my own podcast name.
It will be in the notes no matter what.
Procedural conversation.
Maybe it's another
play on words of procedural generation.
But it's Chris Compendio again.
Hello, I'm here again.
Thank you for coming back on, Chris, especially to be last returning guest was Jess, and Jess was the first one I ever talked to about a webtoon. And you're on tonight, and you're gonna be the first person I ever talked to about a TV show or any other like non-reading material in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. We're gonna talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I know Chris is super passionate about it, and I guess my background history of it is I watched it when it aired originally for the first season. And then I stopped it like I do with most TV shows. I never can finish anything, which is... There's also coming from the man who's like, almost 700 episodes in a One Piece currently?
Good God, man.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say anything else about that.
I'm just saying, if it's people that look real, I can't watch it, I guess. I guess that's what my brain is like. It's like, oh, you guys look too real to people I know. I can't watch you.
They have to have unrealistic proportions and, maybe some stretchy arms, let's say.
And some screaming, I guess.
Absolutely.
But I know, Chris, you're super passionate about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's such a amalgam of the MCU in a lot of ways, especially with the TV shows, because there's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then there's Agent Carter, which is kind of a mini-series, even though I don't think it wanted to be.
They were kind of going for like an anthology, like case per season deal, even though we only got two.
Yeah, and that one, I remember catching a little bit of that, and that felt like kind of a show kind of going for a retro vibe in some ways. And then you have Netflix Marvel, which is all dark and brooding. And
yeah, a lot of scenes like in the dark, like at night on the docks with a bunch of shipping crates.
And then you have like Hulu, ABC, Marvel, which is like your whole family can watch this if they really feel like it.
I don't know if your whole family can watch Runaways, but yeah, maybe.
And I guess Hellstorm, wherever that new one is now.
I forgot it was out until like the day it was out. I was like, oh,
yeah. Doesn't seem like people are watching that either. And then we have Disney Plus Marvel TV shows that are coming out
soon.
But yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So let's just start with Chris. Like, what made you decide to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I am an MCU completionist. I was fascinated because they announced this shortly after Avengers 1, right?
Yes, it was like I want to say a year, maybe 2 years after Avengers 1. I know they were talking about it right after that.
It premiered May 2013, which was September 2013. Which was a little over a year after Avengers 1. So it must have been like late 2012, early 2013. And like the big deal was that like, hey, Joss Whedon, the dude who fucking made that Avengers movie you liked, is like the co-creator and executive producer. Did
he direct or write the first episode?
He direct and co-wrote the first episode, and the first episode only.
Which, if anything, I think that's the weakest episode of that first season.
Yeah, totally. It totally is. Like, you can see a lot of like Joss Whedon isms, like a lot of weird camera angles that he also uses in that first Avengers movie. And I don't know. It's just looking back at that first episode, it looks real cheap. But I mean that was a big deal, like to fans at the time. Although I will say at the time I did not know the difference between Marvel Television and Marvel Studios.
I mean, at the time, I don't think most people did because they really pitched this as just another arm of the Marvel Studios.
Totally, yeah, exactly. Like with this whole Coulson Lives thing, like that gave it some gravity.
Yeah,
like here's this minor fan favorite supporting character that had a heroic ending in Avengers 1, but like, hey, he has a comic book revival and he is the headliner. Like, this is supposed to be about like the non-powered people in the MCU, and then like that could be appealing. Like that could, like, you can imagine that as a procedural.
And with Avengers and then later Winter Soldier, I feel like it really drilled home that people were actually super curious about what S.H.I.E.L.D. is.
Totally. I think the main point of inspiration actually was more so, did you watch that Marvel short film Item 47?
Yes. I don't remember when I did, but I went back and watched all those short films when I found out they were actually canon.
Yeah. It had Sitwell and Blake, who shows up in season 1 actually and season 3 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And that was just kind of like, hey, we're picking up the pieces. Like, this is a story based on these 2 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who are trying to pursue these criminals who like find the Chitauri gun. Like, it's just a leftover piece of trash from a battle, and that became like kind of a theme of season 1. Like, there was an episode where they're like, it's the big Thor the Dark World tie-in, and then it was just like the opening scene, they're picking up the trash from the London flight in that movie. Like, whoa. So it felt like I thought I was supposed to be also watching this.
That's what it felt like for me too.
Yeah, I didn't realize that a different company was making this because, at the time, Marvel Television, that was under the Marvel Entertainment umbrella. At some point, it might have been afterwards, like during Age of Ultron era, but like Marvel Studios became more of a Walt Disney Studios division, and kind of away from the Marvel politics, because Ike Perlmutter, the CEO, is a Trump supporting a-hole.
And S.H.I.E.L.D. was before the Loeb era, right? Loeb didn't have anything to do with S.H.I.E.L.D., did he?
He did.
Yeah. Oh, did he? Okay, I couldn't remember. I didn't know if Loeb was just only heading up the Netflix stuff at the time, or if
I think that was kind of his first rodeo.
Gotcha.
Like that was kind of like that was the progenitor of Marvel Television and their whole extension. And it's funny, like looking at the whole history of Marvel Television, because that is no longer a thing.
Not really.
No, not at all. Like, no, God.
I still think of the Disney Plus stuff that I know is coming, and I think that is
right. Like, because like
it's not really. Yeah,
it's weird because like those are Kevin Feige joints. Like those are Marvel Studios proper.
Yeah.
And it's funny that like Marvel Television began and ended with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It went on for 7 seasons, unless you count Hellstrom, because Hellstrom, whatever the hell that show is. I still think
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I haven't watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. yet, and it's not on streaming yet. So there we go.
Yeah. Season 7 coming to Netflix on October, I think 29th or 30th, whatever. But
it's also funny that like the 2 worst people to start this kind of legacy are started such a legacy that had no feet underneath it, like Loeb and Whedon. Like, I'm gonna put this out here right now, are not good people.
Yeah, some stuff came out about Loeb.
Yeah, and there's some stuff about Whedon that doesn't.
Whedon is a turf. Whedon has apparently abused people on set. He
maybe was gaslighting his ex-wife. Like,
infidelity. He was gaslighting. There was infidelity involved, like a lot of power dynamics and stuff like that.
So it is surprising that something that both of them started lasted so long in a lot of ways. But I also think it's a testament to how strong the brand is, and also how strong the people behind it, like the writers and the actors and just the people who were making it, were passionate about that idea.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I guess to give more background to the show's production, I mean, it was more than just Joss. Like, it was his brother Jed Whedon and Jed Whedon's wife Marissa Tancherone. The 2 of them, they were heavily involved with Dr. Horrible Sing-Along blog and especially Dollhouse.
Yeah.
I have not seen Dollhouse, but I hear from a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans that there's a bit of Dollhouse ness in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But so like they know, and also Jeffrey Bell, who I believe is kind of like a Whedon, and maybe I have to look up what he's done before. But yeah, I mean, like it sounds like Joss Whedon was like very very hands off after the casting, and after the pilot. But probably for the better. And then after that, like it was just. Yeah, Jeffrey Bell, he worked on Angel, so he is another Joss Whedon alum, let's say.
Which, to give some credit where it's worth, like everybody that has followed Whedon in a lot of ways is like have been pretty good people. Maybe not Alan Tudyk with some of his stances, but everybody else have been like really, I think, good people for like nerdom and like the kind of geek industry in a lot of ways.
Sure, yeah. I just rewatched all of Firefly with a friend group recently.
That show feels too old for me to try.
It definitely showed its age. There were it's really weird because like at some point you kind of get all the Joss Whedisms like you would with like an Aaron Sorkin or a Tarantino or Stephen Moffat or something like that, and like I started noticing things like the use of the word there's this dirty word that Loki uses in Avengers, and it showed up again in Firefly, and then Joss Whedon is really into like this turfy thing called womb theory, which came up in Age of Ultron with like Black Widow, and that came about again in Firefly. It's like, wow, this dude sucked.
I cannot wait till I start my first watch through of Buffy.
I never watched Buffy. Someone else can report to me. I'm not gonna try myself, but
I'll give you my 20-something-year-old feedback when I find it, because I know it's one of those things I need to get to eventually.
Yeah, but I mean, speaking of Firefly, I mean, I feel like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was supposed to kind of have a similar. I guess Whedon is into the ensemble cast. Like that is basically why he got the Avengers gig, because he's good at managing ensembles. Like Firefly has a good ensemble cast. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like they had a spread. They had Coulson, the leader. They had Melinda May, who was like kind of the strong female character who just beats people up, but she's kind of cold, and kind of emotionless. And then you have like square-jawed Grant Ward. You have two quirky, tech
wizards.
Tech wizard. Yeah, and then you got the wild card with Sky, the hacker. And then they're all on a freaking giant plane. That is, not. It is no Serenity, that's for sure. But it was a distinct kind of like hub.
Now you gave me a list of episodes to watch, and my genius brain trying to figure out what's the best way to do this. Watched one from season 1, one from season 6, and we talked yesterday about the one I was watching from season 6 and how
idea.
It was a bit jarring, but the one I watched from season 1 was the Fitz and Simmons focused one where I don't remember what the name of the episode is, but
I think it's just called Fitz, like FZZT, which is a wild name, but
it makes sense. But it made me realize that, and this is not Whedon per se, because he didn't have much to do after that first episode, but the idea of a Whedon show makes this is what I think of, and it's like, what if it was a sitcom, a one-room sitcom, but an action show?
Sure.
And it's always the vibe I get from even Avengers in a lot of ways. Avengers is like, how can we make them move as little as possible?
Yo, they're drunk and trying to lift Thor's hammer at a party.
Yeah. like I'm thinking off the top of my head, and I think Avengers 1 maybe has like 7 locations other than like some of the establishing ones.
Probably.
Yeah, it's very limited, but I think at the same time it really gives the characters enough time to breathe and kind of like interact with each other more so than your typical action show where you get the stop at the beginning and the stop at the end when they're kind of friends together. I think like Criminal Minds or like Law and Order, where they're like, we're getting drinks before the crime happens, and then afterwards, let's get drinks after the crime happens.
What did we learn today?
Yeah, but with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., at least from the two that I watched, like it seems very much that the character interaction is happening, and them like actually being having more than just a work relationship is happening throughout the entire episode, and it never stops.
Yeah, there are some very good character dynamics. Like you can kind of mix and match any two characters, and there is like a different dynamic there.
Yeah,
I think it's probably one of the strengths of the show, because a show begins, everyone is just kind of a caricature.
Yeah,
they have one or two traits, and they grow as given time, if the network allows them, like they will develop and probably change and go through an arc. And like all of these characters have gone through a significant arc. Like watching early season 1 is hard to watch because you're like, these are very different people.
Yeah.
Like you skip to season 6, it's like the cast is different. Who are these people?
Well, that's what I was watching. I'm like, is Coulson the only one I know? And it's not even like actual Coulson.
Wasn't right. Season 6 was a weird one.
Yeah. But in talking about the show, like you've seen every episode except for season 7, right? Or have you watched all season 7?
No, I finished the show.
I'm
all powerful.
I wasn't sure. So you've seen every episode, and then I spent a good solid hour maybe reading all of the actual comics that not tied into the show, but were inspired by the show. There's 22 comics that are based off the show. Mm-hmm. And then 2 like anniversary issues that have like characters from the show in it, but they're not really tied in. And then there's the 3 mini Iron Man 2 comics.
Right.
The Iron Man 2 comics are bad. I don't want to talk about those.
Sure.
Because as most movie tie-in books are, they're just there to sell with toys at some point.
Yeah.
What I'm really curious is the dynamic between the 2 different runs versus the show itself too. Mm-hmm. And what I think is so fascinating is, and I think especially since we talked about how the characters change from season 1 and then to season 7, like there's eventually a rotating cast of characters in some ways. Like you get 2 separate kind of distinct teams.
Sure. I mean, it's it's definitely like an evolving team and growing team, and like different roles kind of change, and like they cut characters out. Like they did bring Bobby Morse and Lance Hunter, both comics characters, into season 2, and they were really good characters. But by season 3, like the cast was just getting too big.
Yeah.
They tried to give Bobby and Hunter their own spin-off show, and then the pilot was not picked up by ABC, so they were just gone from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Somebody argument is a huge mistake, but I find it interesting with like let's talk about like comic to TV to comic, I guess, because it's always an interesting premise. Like, I think like Harley Quinn in DC is sort of the prime example of that, of like a breakout character from a TV show who becomes a canonical comic book character.
Yeah.
And then elements of that comic adaptation begins to show up
in the movies and the TV shows.
In like movies and TV shows. Yeah, that's kind of wild. And like
and now it feels like, especially with the animated series and even honestly Birds of Prey, like elements from those are now reverberating back into the comics too.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. And so like likewise, like the original characters of this show, like Mac and Daisy Johnson are comic characters. Bobby and Hunter are comic characters. Yo-Yo, I believe, is in the comics. But then other than that, like Coulson, obviously the breakout. Then you got May Fitzsimmons. And then
Quake,
eventually Ward came, like being his old, Trader McTrader son.
So that's what's so fascinating too about the comics is like, I know they kind of make, when they first introduced Coulson, I want to say it was in Secret Avengers. And
I believe that's correct from my Wikipedia reading.
Yeah, and like I actually had issues of that because I knew Coulson was being introduced in that, so I bought those issues growing up. And I read and it was very much Coulson is best friends with Nick Fury, and he's still the fanboy from Avengers.
Nick Fury Jr., right?
Nick Fury Jr. Yes, Nick Fury Jr.
The one who just happens to like who looks like Samuel Jackson.
Yeah.
Also lost an eye.
Yeah, it's extremely the Avengers, Coulson and Nick Fury kind of duo in Secret Avengers. But then grabbing the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. books today and reading those, the first run is Coulson basically becomes like the did you ever watch the animated Justice League cartoon?
The 2000 early 2000s one.
Yeah, and like the Justice League Unlimited and stuff.
That was my favorite.
So do you remember kind of in Justice League Unlimited, John Jones basically becomes the coordinator of Justice League?
He's like the roster man.
Yeah, that is Coulson's role in that first series. Mm-hmm. He's basically pairing up with different heroes in each different issue. And what's also bonkers is there's literally a different artist on every issue. There's not a same artist for more than one issue.
Really? That's weird.
Yeah, it's the same writer, but it's jarring that each issue just changes art styles. And there's not like entire arcs or anything. I could say there's like maybe one arc, if anything, within the comic, because there are things that slowly tie together at one point. Yeah. But it's only in the first 5 issues. Yeah. So Coulson is basically just teaming up with different characters and then sometimes different characters from the shows to stop threats in every issue.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a master strategist, right? Like,
yeah,
I know the strengths and weaknesses of all of these. Yeah.
Yeah. He's opened up they opened up the first issue when he's been kidnapped and he's like saying X-Men names. And they're
he's like reciting them like in his sleep, right? Like
he's reciting like as he's being tortured. And they're like, is he reciting his favorite X-Men? They're like, no, he's reciting all of them alphabetically. And it's like, okay, so Coulson's the super fan of this universe.
Yes.
And it even shows history of him memorizing like the first Hulk versus Thing fight and like taking notes about what their different skill sets are and stuff.
Yeah.
So he's the Deku of this universe. What's so funny is it's so different than the second volume because the second volume is the S.H.I.E.L.D. group. And it's very focused on Coulson trying to uncover some kind of espionage thing with the group. And then you find out Ward exists. And
darn.
Like, is he a double agent? Is he still an agent of Hydra? He tried
a triple agent? Who knows?
Yeah, and you find out he's really just a terrible person.
Accurate, yes.
Which is fair. And then like you find out too that somehow all of Coulson's notes, he becomes Batman all of a sudden. All of Coulson's notes about every countermeasure for everybody, including the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents themselves, gets leaked. So everybody knows now how to take down everybody because of Coulson. And that's the premise of that. And it's just so fascinating because it basically I feel like it got really derailed near the end because of its tie-ins to Civil War II and how bad that
crossover. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because it ends at the end of Civil War II. Like they don't get more issues. And it's like, oh yeah, this would have been better if it didn't have to tie into any of that.
That's really silly. That's really funny though. Like, because when you're describing this to me, it almost sounds like fantasy fulfillment because of the corporate divide, you never get to see the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the TV show interact with the movie characters, save for like Maria Hill and Sif, and that's it.
Yeah, and like with that first run, it's a comic book writer and one that's famous over at DC for doing a reboot of Brave and the Bold, which is a team up book. Basically, the Marvel version with Coulson being the Batman character who's teamed up with everybody.
That's cool. That's pretty.
But
cool.
Then the second volume is a TV writer writing the comic because it's not Greg Berlanti, it's Mark Guggenheim from the Arrowverse. So he's writing that, and it feels like a TV show that has to cross over with a big movie somehow.
Right.
The TV show suffers from it because that's how that works when you don't write crossovers right. So it is fascinating to see the two different aspects of it.
That's so fascinating. I did not know there was that much of a discrepancy between.
And they go right into each other too. Like the end of the first series.
Yeah.
Next month, pick up number 1 of the new series.
Right, because it went from S.H.I.E.L.D. to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Correct?
And it ends with which one's Simmons?
Simmons is the lady bio.
It ends with her being a Deathlock.
What?
he gets some kind of disease, and Deathlock's there already. And he's like, "Oh, I'm the only one smart enough to help try to figure out how to cure this disease because you're getting sick."
Right.
And he just turns her into a Deathlock because that's the only way to save her.
Sure, that's wow.
And I'm like, so we end with Coulson kind of semi-retired and Simmons. Okay. Best issue. That's the Howard the Duck issue, by the way, of the first run. That's the best
perfect.
Issue. It's perfect. Finn and Howard the Duck teaming up, and they both see their futures. And Fitz sees himself married to Simmons, and Howard the Duck sees himself married to some other duck.
Good for them, honestly. I think, yeah, because like it's my understanding that like Deathlock is a concept from the characters, and they kind of turned Deathlock in the comics into like TV show Deathlock, and like they retcon so Daisy is an Inhuman when she wasn't before. Like it's just like, oh, it turns out I'm actually an Inhuman. Like
it's so fascinating how much the movies and TV shows influence the comics and so forth with Marvel compared to the DC side. And for better or for worse, it's kind of how it is in that, because I definitely remember after Iron Man became such a success, everybody was drawing Iron Man as Robert Downey Jr. Now, not so much.
Sure.
When it first started, it was very much like that.
I'm gonna guess it's because the Marvel movies are actually successful,
especially with someone like Iron Man. Yeah, like it that's the most popular Iron Man's ever been is the movies.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I'm glad to see that they've learned their lesson from trying so hard to do this, because it seems like now the comics and the movies are pretty separate overall.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the movies have kind of wrote themselves in a corner with all this Endgame 5 years later, everyone died kind of stuff. So it's it's really hard. I mean, we'll see like when new characters like Shang-Chi come up. And
so excited for the new wave.
Yeah, apparently they just finished. They just wrapped the shoot for that. So that's pretty cool.
It's one of those things where like you hope that they can do what they did for Iron Man again. I mean, it's trying to capture lightning in the bottle again, but like. These are the characters that you could do that with, and so like that's what's so exciting about it.
Yeah, I mean, like like Guardians of the Galaxy, like that was a different comic before the movie.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah, now they're all.
Look at even like Rocket himself, like
in
the comic, I think his thing was every time he would kill someone, he would say, "Blam, you're dead." And like after the movie, nope, just talking like a normal person.
Yeah. Now Star-Lord's just Chris Pratt, I guess.
I mean, he's not as dumb as Chris Pratt's Star-Lord. There's that.
Okay.
He doesn't ruin the world because he can't hold his cool.
Yeah. I imagine if Eternals takes off, then like you're gonna see a lot more Eternals comics.
We have one it was supposed to come out this year. I think it's pushed back to January now, but it's
interesting.
It's the guy behind I don't know if you know much about independent books, but he's behind Die and Wicked and Divine.
Okay.
And basically all the stuff that seems like it would be an Eternals book, he's been behind independently. So I mean, it's exciting to see him do something like that, because Eternals is one of those books that doesn't work. And
interesting.
Like the creator Jack Kirby tried to do it. It got canceled before his like 10-year plan got fulfilled. Neil Gaiman tried to do it, got like 6 issues in, got canceled. Like the biggest names in comics tried to make it work and it hasn't worked. So I'm
weird.
Another big name can try and actually get it to work.
Angelina Jolie in the new movie.
Kumail Gianni's in it too, and he got jacked.
Yeah, he did indeed. That was a whole thing on the internet.
Yeah. So, Chris, is there anything else about? I know we kind of got off topic, but is there anything else about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in general that you wanted to focus on about why you love it so much?
Probably just how it evolved through the years, because it kind of started off. It started off like I expected. It was very much like a procedural, like a monster of the day or a case of the day, I guess, and it was blatantly referencing the movies all the time.
Yeah.
Just like name drops and stuff like that. And it was just like kind of annoying. It's like, yes, we know you can't get these people, so we're just going to mention them over and over again. And then it was the Winter Soldier tie-in that was just really fascinating, because that's kind of the first time you see that in in live action comic book media. Because like, you know, here's the example I always like to bring up, like with the Winter Soldier tie-in. Like you watch an episode, it's like it airs on a Tuesday, and there's like this huge cliffhanger where it's like, oh, who's like, someone might be a mole, like who we trust, and it's just like this massive to be continued.
Yeah.
Then you watch Winter Soldier on Friday.
Yeah.
And you find out, oh, it turns out Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. And S.H.I.E.L.D. just gets freaking blown up at the end, essentially. And then I'm walking out the theater, and people are like, wait, what does that mean for the show? Like, wait, is May Hydra? Like, what's going on here? And then you tune in next Tuesday, and you see how the movie affected the show. And that was novel. That was kind of beautiful.
And it's something that you would think, and I guess this is where the Disney Plus shows really come in, because that's what they're literally going to be, is affecting the future movies. But you would think it's something that they would have picked on how cool that concept was and ran with it. But it felt like they did it once, really, and then they kind of just let it fall.
I can see why, because like number one, like that movie was S.H.I.E.L.D. focused, so it would obviously have so many consequences for the show. And it's really fascinating because the writers knew that this was how it was going to go.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they were twiddling their thumbs until the twist. If like a layman asks someone, hey, where should I start with the show? They'll probably say, start with the Winter Soldier tie-in.
Yeah.
I would sell them to start from the beginning because there's still a lot of important context in those earlier episodes, and there was like some good character stuff in those early episodes. But I totally get why. And then from there, the show became a lot more arc focused. Yeah. And almost like a comic, would with like a 4 issue arc or whatever, and they would in the promotional material they would have like like the post Winter Soldier period was called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Uprising or something like that. Yada, yada. And they would do that for like events, like like someone's gonna die at the end of season 3, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Fallen Agent or something like that. And then the show just started wearing different hats as it evolved. So season 1 kind of resolved all, like, not totally resolved, but like all the Hydra stuff, and like now S.H.I.E.L.D's going to be underground. Phil Coulson's going to be the director. Nick Fury gives him his blessing. Season 2 was kind of like the introduction to Hydra's crazy scientific experimentation, and Inhumans was coming like to the MCU, and like this was back in the day when Feige was supposed to be making an Inhumans movie, which obviously never happened.
And then we got that wonderful TV show.
I don't know what you're talking about, but but it was like, oh wow, they're putting Inhumans from the TV shows first. Oh, that's great. Yeah, and then season 3 kind of continued with it. They went deeper into the Inhuman lore. They had like Hive, the original Inhuman, and they had a lot of Kree related mythology. Like I wrote in the notes for you, episode 19, failed experiments, and in parentheses my note was some Kree bullshit. Because it turns out the Kree, they were like experimenting on like the earliest human beings, and now they consider them like failed experiments. Then season 4, Jesse, they divided the season into 3 parts. Okay. And they called them pods. Okay. And they were like very distinct storylines that all kind of like merged together at the end. So like pod 1 was Ghost Rider. Robbie Reyes.
I watched the first episode of season 4 because of that.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, I'm like, oh, Ghost Rider.
Dude's head was on fire, man.
Yeah, it looked great. Like that's one of the best TV visual effects I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it looked pretty good. Like they probably wasted their budget on it because the rest of the entire show took place in hallways, but yeah, so like that was some pretty cool stuff, and they like it was around the same time Doctor Strange came out, so it's like, okay, now that Doctor Strange is out there, we as a TV show can play around with magic and
which is cool.
Yeah, totally. Because like the thing is that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is always playing with the leftovers.
Yeah.
Like they wanted to use Loki's staff, but they were vetoed because like, no, Agent Voltron's going to use that.
Yeah.
They wanted to use MODOK, but they were vetoed because I guess a movie's going to have MODOK at some point.
And then all of a sudden we have an anime show on Hulu with Penn.
Right. That looks weird, man. But
it looks bizarre.
Yeah, they were supposed to make a Howard the Duck one. I don't think that's happening. Yada yada. But Marvel Television, what a total mess. But anyway, pod number 2 was LMD. It was an LMD themed, life model decoy themed pod. Some Westworld bullshit was going on with like, you're switching out and you don't know who's real or not, and it's pretty cool. And then the last pod was like this weird like virtual reality thing where it's like this alternate reality where Hydra plays S.H.I.E.L.D. and they have like a fascist state and they're ruled by Madam Hydra, and there were like all of these blatant Trump references.
Perfect.
Like fake news and alternative facts and couch shopping, and at one point Evil Fitz says, nevertheless she persisted. Make Hydra great, make our nation great again is a thing they said. But
perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I did appreciate they're like, yo, Hydra, they're Nazis, because like that was a little after the time that whole Captain America thing happened in the comic books.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, yes, they are.
Don't you forget it.
Yeah, totally. Season 5 was space and time travel. So it's like, okay, we're getting into some deeper territory. And if there's this one point where Mac, like when he finds out they're in space, he's like, he sarcastically goes, oh, of course, because that's the one thing we haven't done yet.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, they go to the freaking future, and there's some more Kree bullshit, and they run like a human colony with an iron fist and stuff like that. And then the rest of the season, when they get back to the present, is about them trying to prevent the end of the goddamn world. Season 6 is just, I don't even know how to describe season 6. Like, there's some space stuff, there's some Earth stuff. It's just kind of like a mishmash. But season 7 was like the final mission, and it was time travel to the past. So just a lot of like fun period stuff. And
did they go back to the beginning of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D?
They went back to like Prohibition era, and they kept skipping to different time periods, and they were like seeing early S.H.I.E.L.D.
Fascinating.
And, yeah.
Which I guess goes hand in hand with what the premise of Endgame kind of is. So
totally, they played by Endgame rules of like split timelines. Like
gotcha.
They literally go to the quantum realm in the last episode. Spoiler alert! Like with the same CGI effects and everything.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's so crazy how that show just evolves every season. And they try to draw a lot of different. At some point, they just kind of stopped adapting things from the comics, and they just started like adapting themes and visuals from the comics. Like, like they make up planets and they make up characters that are like not. They don't have a source. They're just like whatever works for the story. And I think that was a good way to go. They just stopped referencing the movies all the time, and they were like, let's build our own mythology.
Yeah, which I think is the best way to go about it, really.
Yeah. And that mythology will eventually switch the comic books, I assume, in some way or another. Like, if they eventually put freaking Ward in there, like who knows who else they're gonna add. I'm curious. I would like to see if like Bobby and Hunter are kind of MCU-unified in the comics now, but
it feels like the designs of them became what the comic designs became.
Totally, yeah.
So I guess that helps in that way.
Yeah. And Daisy Johnson is like becoming like Quake is becoming more of a household name. Like she was in that animated like all-female Marvel movie. She is apparently going to be in the Avengers game.
She's in those comics, and she had in the anniversary books, like they focused on like Nick Fury and stuff, but she had her own.
Yeah, totally.
So like, yeah, she's definitely becoming more of a part. And I feel like whenever something Marvel comes out, everybody's like, "When's Quake coming back?"
That's right. Yeah, it's
so,
like
and that's become a whole thing recently too. I've noticed.
Yeah, because like it's pretty obvious that now that they have the rights to use S.H.I.E.L.D, that S.H.I.E.L D is probably going to show up in WandaVision and maybe the Loki show. Like,
I 100% think S.H.I.E.L D will be big to the future of Marvel, especially at the end of Spider-Man.
Yeah, they're in freaking space, and like spoiler alert,
space sword is space.
Spoiler alert in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Last episode, Daisy is in space. She's traveling in space for work-related reasons that are unknown, but it's just kind of like what are they up to now? And it's just like a few seconds of each character.
I just can't wait till Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. 2 gets announced, and it's a Disney Plus show, and it's just them. It's just S.W.O.R.D, and it's just the same cast.
Don't give me hope. Don't give me hope. Kevin Feige had nothing to do with that show. Who knows if he actually likes it?
He might like it.
I could say there was a picture of Kevin Feige and Brett Dalton hugging at a red carpet event, and that is the only interaction I've ever seen.
It felt more like a Feige joint when I watched the episode of season 6.
That's really interesting.
So,
yeah, I wonder. Yeah, the only show that Kevin Feige has a credit in is Agent Carter, because Agent Carter is based on that short film.
And from what I've seen of that definitely feels like the old, like when it felt like the beginning of Cap. It feels like that whole thing.
Joe Russo directed episode 2 of that show.
Yeah. That really where it comes down to when it comes to all of the Marvel TV stuff, because I have a question too, is like, why do you think, like, because it's weird, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. lasted for 7 seasons, but it felt like it lasted for 7 seasons, but every season they were on the skin of their teeth trying to survive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm curious, this is just one of the questions I came up with earlier, but we'll just jump into these now, is why do you think it didn't land in its first season like Daredevil did or like Jessica Jones did?
Well, for one, it's a network show, and I think it's kind of hard to be bolder, unless you're like freaking Hannibal or something. But even Hannibal was restrained by it being a network show, and it was strange because it didn't feel distinct at first.
Yeah.
It felt like it was their first TV show, and they didn't really know what this was, because like it has to tie in with the movies, but we're trying to make our own thing. But like, what is this thing? And there was just a lot of cliche. Like there was, episode 2 ends with them drinking a beer and saying, we make a pretty good team.
And then cut to credits, and you're watching Criminal Minds.
Yeah, and then another episode has the classic line, "She's standing right behind me, isn't she?" Like just like really, like who are you and what have you done with blank? Like just really, really canned.
Or like again, going back to the one episode I watched of season 1, it has the typical sci-fi show trope of, oh, one of us got infected with the disease we just learned about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was an interesting episode because, like, I don't know, it showed emotional consequences of, like, someone left a helmet here and it gave us a virus, but it's like, oh, this is a big deal for this one random firefighter because he's gonna freaking die and he's a human being.
Yeah.
So Jim Steranko, is that how you say his name?
Yes.
He is Steranko. He wrote. I'm reading Wikipedia. His most famous comic book was the 1960s super spy feature Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I have a few fun facts about that if you want to hear them.
Hit me.
He came into Marvel, and he basically said, "Give me your lowest selling book," and they gave him Nick Fury. And he's like, "Okay, I'll take it," because he's like, basically, if I can work on the lowest selling book, I can do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned Nick Fury in like Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever the title was, which is basically, it was just like a classic war comic.
Sure.
And he made it into a psychedelic James Bond book.
Damn.
And like he got in so much trouble a few times because he kept on wanting to draw sex scenes and stuff, but it was back during like Comics Code era and stuff like that, so he couldn't get away.
Sure, yeah.
So the most famous scene from that original comic book is there's a scene where Nick Fury goes to bed with a woman and like it just cuts to a gun in a holster. Like that's like a whole page or something like that. And everyone's like, oh, okay. Like we get it.
I get what you're doing, Jim.
Yeah. So yeah, Strenko is like, you look up a picture of Strenko, he looks like a man who's writing a 70s spy book.
I saw his picture a lot during season 1 of the show because he kept trashing the show week after week. I think he had like a column, like saying like, I don't understand what Fitz and Simmons are saying. Like, this is so lame.
Strenko's a very opinionated older creator.
Yeah, like the only good scene is when Nick Fury shows up and yells at people. Like that's like, it seemed like I think that column disappeared at like halfway into season 1, so I could not tell you what he thought of the rest of the show. But
I think it's okay that we don't know.
Probably better off. But I mean, here's the thing. The actors in the show are really good actors.
Yeah, I mean, like off the bat, Coulson, he is that role. Greg Clark is that role, and that's all you'll ever see him in now is that role, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, perhaps unfortunate for him, but yes. I mean, he's also a director. Like he directed a movie in between seasons, and he directed 2 episodes of the show. And the Elizabeth Henstridge, who plays Simmons. Mm-hmm. She directed an episode of the last. She directed the time loop episode.
Oh, nice!
That you should totally watch when it's on Netflix this Friday. And it's amazing. It's just an amazing episode, and I believe she has more directing gigs lined up now that the show's over.
Perfect.
Ian DeCastaker, who plays Fitz, is like oh my goodness, he's so amazing. Like there are just so many scenes I can cite where he just like, he's just such a good actor, man.
Like, yeah, but then like even like the alumni kind of cast, like the what is her name? The person who plays Mockingbird and
sure, totally, yeah.
And I can't remember any characters' names and actresses' names, but she's the other agent, like she's the agent that fights is the best way I get, but from first season.
Are you talking about Melinda May, played by Ming-Na Wen, a.k.a. the original Mulan?
Like, both of them are, like, class act TV actors in a lot of ways.
Yeah, totally.
Like, both of them have been in a ton of TV shows and movies. Like, Mockingbird was in John Wick. Like, she's great in that.
Yeah, she's in the Orville right now.
Yeah, and all of them, like, are still she's in Orville now. And, like, we saw... Chris, who are
we talking about?
Is it
Ming-Na?
Yeah, Ming-Na
Wen. She was Mandalorian.
She was a Mandalorian. Maybe not the best use of her, but she was great in it.
Totally, yeah. Brett Dalton wasn't Until Dawn.
Yeah.
And he's had a few indie movies. Yeah. Ian DeCastaker, who I think is just such an amazing, talented actor. He was in that Nazi zombies movie, Overlord, and he is in some sort of BBC. He's in like some British political scandal show with Hugh Laurie that's coming out.
And all I know about the BBC shows are they're usually quality.
Yeah, oh my God. So that virtual reality arc in season 4, like, a lot of the characters, they like lost their memories of who they actually are. So like, Fitz becomes like this crazy, like, Hydra Nazi scientist dude.
Yeah.
And like Fitz is like a small lanky dude. Like he's not very intimidating. He scares the shit out of me in that role. Like he's so freaking good.
And like the episode I watched of season 6, like Greg Clark is playing like a bad Coulson, basically.
Coulson, yeah.
I don't really know what the scenario is that, but he is scary.
Yeah, totally
terrifying as a bad guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jeff Ward, who plays Deke, the episode you saw, he was kind of like a Silicon Valley scumbag.
Yeah.
Like, he's very funny. Yeah, he's very funny in that role.
And like the chief dude in season 1, who I think he turns out to be a Hydra agent, the guy that's always on Coulson's back. He's been in everything really, but he's in Bosch. Like he's the lead actor of Bosch. What is his name?
Oh yeah, he was in Item 47.
Yeah, and he was in the one episode of season
yeah. So yeah, what happens with him is that he gets severely injured before the Winter Soldier tie-in, so he's not a part of that. He just kind of disappears, and then.
But like he's great too, and he's like in a good chunk of. I remember season 1.
Yeah, he shows up in season 3 as a bad guy for one episode because he's like kind of burnt of like how S.H.I.E.L.D. has been using powered people, and he was like hurt. He was almost killed by a deathlock. So it's like he joins this like anti-Inhuman terrorist group.
And the guy from Twin Peaks, I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Kyle MacLachlan.
He's in. They have a great cast of supporting characters.
Yeah. So yeah, he plays Daisy's dad, Mr. Hyde. I will say the makeup and effects for Mr. Hyde are not good, but Kyle MacLachlan is very good. He just chews at the seat. He is just so hammy and just so over the top, and it's just so entertaining to watch. Like, I feel like every season had a guest actor at that caliber. Like, season one had Bill fucking Paxton.
Perfect.
Like, freaking 80s icon Bill Paxton, and that dude was just so entertaining, and like he was just so freaking charismatic to watch.
Speaking of Hyde too, he's in one of the comics. I think he's in volume 2, and when they draw him just like Kyle MacLachlan, he looks exactly like that. But 2, what happens is Daisy is getting sick, and it's something to do with him, and so they capture him, and he like finds a cure for whatever. But then he tries to inject her with the same Hyde formula he has, but to save her, Coulson injects himself with it, and then like he becomes Hyde too, and they start having a Hyde fight.
It's absolutely ridiculous, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you'll enjoy that issue in particular.
I mean, not to spoil the ending of season 4, but Coulson becomes a ghostwriter for a temporary
feels like everybody becomes a ghostwriter at this point. People are just like, oh man, I'm angry. Oh man, I'm flamey now.
Yeah. I'm curious if because like they're supposed to give Robbie Reyes his own Hulu show, and then
and not gonna happen. Probably
politicking happens behind the scenes. I mean, maybe Feige wants to use Johnny Blaze for a movie or a Disney Plus show or something.
I would give a solid amount of money. Not gonna say exactly how much, but a solid amount of money to watch a Ghost Riders TV show. Where it's the 3 main Ghost Riders interacting with each other. Because they just did that with the most recent book, and it was really entertaining.
Yeah. I feel I think they'll do anything to get rid of the Nicolas Cage one out of people's heads, but
they're never gonna get out of the scene though where he's pissing fire. So, Chris, since Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has ended, and there's little hope that, well, I don't want to say a little hope, because I do think there is some hope that we could see these characters come back in a S.H.I.E.L.D.-ish form in another show. But if they decide to play around with the MCU TV-wise again and give us another aspect of the universe that's not superhero-focused, what do you want to see?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think it would work if they spread out these characters through the universe. Like obviously, you will never get like a S.H.I.E.L.D. successor show. That's just that's too hard to do. That's the cast has moved on probably, and like the executives involved like probably don't really have a job at Marvel anymore. So
probably not.
It would probably take someone internally in Marvel Studios who says, you know what, I think this property has a lot more potential to still be its own thing. Like that's not going to happen. I think at best, if they do make a Sword show, for example, like they're making a freaking Nick Fury Disney Plus show. They announced,
which I think is the secret Sword show, if we're being honest.
Probably, yeah, and they have to at least be talking about, hey, Daisy Johnson is a popular character now. People like Chloe Bennett. Chloe Bennett is campaigning publicly for this.
Yeah.
And the way the show ended, makes it possible for her to be in a sword show like that. They basically served the character on a silver platter from Marvel Studios, like, you know, like they like, you know, it's your move, and like, you know, Mac is the director of like the last time you see Mac in the show is he is on a helicarrier, like, implying that S.H.I.E.L.D. is like has been rebuilt to some extent. So like they, you know, they set that up in case the show wants to pick up on, in case the movies want to pick up on that. But you know, Feige probably has like his master plan on his cork board, and it'll probably only work like if it fits in with what their grand scheme is, or like whatever like the particular writer or director wants to use. It just, we have no clue of we don't know what's going on in that man's head. We don't know if he likes the Marvel TV stuff. Like he's probably like jealous that they got Vince D'Onofrio as Kingpin or something like that. But
I think just need to move that show on to Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Like honestly, this is again a tangent, but like the 4 Netflix Marvel shows, yes, they are not all perfect or good, but I think they nailed the casting perfectly with all 4 of them. That somehow I feel like they got to bring him back. Like even that as Iron Fist is, like that guy is Danny Rand to me. Like he looks.
Yeah, and you know maybe Danny Rand is just like a total priss, but like so. I mean, accurate.
Yeah. I mean, they could just they can leave out Iron Fist. We got Shang-Chi now, but I mean, like man, why can't something Ritter?
Kristen Ritter.
She's great as Jessica Jones. I want to call him Jax because he played Jax in Mortal Kombat, but what's his name? Is Luke
Coulter.
Cage. Yeah, Nick Coulter as Luke Cage, and Mike Coulter, and Charlie Cox as Daredevil. Like they're all perfect in those roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, and you know what? It's a shame that they couldn't even cross over ABC and Netflix. Like, you know, like one of Clark Gregg's favorite comic book characters is Iron Fist, but like, because ABC, and even though they're both Marvel television shows, ABC and Netflix are different entities. Like that just, it's like,
and it would have fit perfectly in the S.H.I.E.L.D. universe because the S.H.I.E.L.D. universe is still down to earth enough to fit those characters in.
Absolutely, and like the leftovers we had to work with were like, I don't know, you see someone reading the newspaper from Daredevil, or like the Dogs of Hell biker gang shows up.
I think they mentioned once after Avengers and Daredevil season 1. It's like, oh yeah, after the New York incident.
Yeah, the incident. Yeah, as they keep calling it. They don't even call it the New York incident. They just call it the incident.
Yeah.
Whereas in the movies and in S.H.I.E.L.D., they just call it New York. So it's like, that's a whole nother conversation about those freaking Netflix shows. But I can direct you to some people who would love to talk about Daredevil and Iron Fist. But
what, Chris? We're gonna I'll rewatch them and do a complete spoiler cast of every TV show that Marvel's ever done.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with the classic Hulk TV show with Lou Ferrigno. We're going that far back, Chris.
The Lonely Man piano theme, and then
we'll work our way up.
Yeah. Okay, let's start with the Superman serials.
I have the old Batman serials, I think, on DVD somewhere.
Damn! Wow.
That they are not as bad as you think they are, but they're not as good as you hope they are.
My brief time of having DC Universe, me and my dad tried watching the old Shazam TV show. And
boy,
we could not get through it.
They restored that though. They took their time and restored that.
That's really cool. Like that's amazing.
There's a cool mini documentary about that.
Yeah, I'm just not gonna. Finish.
No, just watch the movie. The movie's good. Movie's good enough. Yeah. Chris, thank you for being on though, talking about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and just kind of just going with it and going with the flow with us going in so many random places tonight. You
know what? So did Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. went.
You never know what you're going to get with each episode of this show. You'll never know what you're going to get with each episode of S.H.I.E.L.D.
You certainly didn't when you skipped from season 1 to 6.
It was just, I was just watching. I'm like, hey, Chris, I'm watching this episode of season 6. I'm like,
who are these people?
Is it possible that I'm not going to see anybody other than Coulson?
And even so, that was not Coulson.
Yeah, exactly. It was not the Coulson we knew. Chris, where can people find you in all of your work?
You can find me at Compenderizer on Twitter.com. I like you said, I am the weekend editor of GamePer.com. We mostly do guides, so if you need help figuring out stuff in Pokemon Go or Genshin Impact, we are your number one source for that.
Don't let the PS5's in-game features pull you away from actual game guides, because no one can be good as the actual game guide writers.
Exactly. Like you want some like extensive.
The developers know
about the experts.
No, the developers don't know about their games.
We have the mindset of the player.
Yeah. You guys know what dumb moves the player is going to make and get confused.
Because we are dumb players. And my podcast, oh my God, I almost said procedural generation. Procedural Conversation, our first batch of 5 episodes. It's all out there. We're kind of on a indefinite hiatus because I'm too busy. But
hey, busy is good though, right?
Yeah, totally. I am planning for a second batch of 5 episodes. Then they're in like pre-production. So, season 2, if you want to call it that.
Series 2.
Series 2, if you're in the UK, perhaps.
Year 2.
Year 2. And yeah, that's pretty much, I hang out on Discord. Find me there.
You can just call it a procedural Now I mess up because you're procedural conversation gold and procedural conversation silver.
Damn.
Pokemon name it.
Maybe, yeah.
You can follow this show on Twitter at comics. Yeah, now I can't talk.
We have the names for shows.
It's just I don't know. It's not even that late for me, and I'm just gone. But yeah, you can follow this show on Twitter at Comic Books Pod, Facebook at facebook.com/comicbooksmatter, email at comicbooksmatter@gmail.com. And if you have questions for guests, stories about how comics impacted your life, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can reach me at all 3 of those places to do that. Don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite platforms and share with friends if you like talking about comics with people on the internet. Logo for the show is done by my friend Steven. The theme is Join the Restaurant by David Szesztay. And remember, lastly, everybody, just be kind to one another.
And vote.
And vote if you still have time to do that when you hear this.